Looked it up on Google.
Oh, okay.
Well, stock, right? Fusion,
Yeah, it's just.
right? I mean, you combine, three hydrogen atoms. There's three protons. What do you get? How do you get helium?
Right.
Yeah.
And it just fuses to heavier and heavier and heavier elements. I mean, how does that happen? That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Val. Yeah, you have to sit in the front of the class. See, that's what happens when you're the last one in. You gotta sit by the teacher.
Wow.
What happened to be here Saturday?
And what year?
8:30.
Brain ball.
What is this?
Brain ball.
Oh, rainfall. We're talking about, it's a ball they use in phys ed to teach kids like numbers and math and stuff like that while they're playing.
Yeah, they have letters too long, which
Yeah.
are.
Oh.
All right,
Yeah.
let's get going here.
I almost feel the wind.
Where was that? Tuned in last
1905
week, so I gotta go to my meeting.
Nebraska.
Quite the subject.
Yeah,
I kept
Well,
going,
you got a good one this week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, see if
Okay, let's begin with prayer.
he might, yeah. Do you mind if I say no?
Lord God, we give you thanks for gathering us together today for study. We ask you, Lord, to open our hearts and our minds as we study your word. This we ask in your name. Amen. So we're going to finish up from last week. We are doing Judah and Tamar. And let's see, we got to the end of it, and I think we got to the birth of the twins. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself," which is what the word Perez means. Therefore his name was called Perez. After his brother came out,
I don't know where.
Genesis 38.
At the end.
Very end of Genesis 38. Therefore, afterward, his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Okay, so first of all, the babies are born. What event do they mirror exactly? What's their
Oh yeah, Isaac and Esau.
Esau and Jacob? Right, right.
There we go.
Oh, it says they're It says the video has ended. Let's see. Maybe. No, it's on.
Are they in the right one?
Is it?
Someone comment. Let me know if we're on.
It says live.
Does it?
Wait, now I lost it. Yeah, it says Trinity's live.
Okay, let me make
But
sure.
if it's live, you'll hear him talking.
Video is fine on mine. Okay,
Oh,
so
wait a minute.
Dr. Billadou's getting it.
Yeah, live doesn't
Everybody
matter.
was running live open house.
Yep. Okay,
And
so
it lies so much on YouTube. We'll say live, and it might be 10 days ago.
So we got Jacob and Esau. That's the exact mirror of Perez and Zerah. So the I guess one of the things that we want to look at there is Zeke running around the yard. Little snooze him. First of all, we want to see how God. Okay, it's back up. Good. Uses these kinds of things. Once again, the God's will is carries the blessings not by tribal law, which says who should inherit it. Zerah should inherit it, not Perez, but God's blessings supersede that. And so Esau and Jacob. Esau should have gotten the birthright. God said no, and Jacob, it's going to go through Jacob. Ruth, look at Ruth 4. Turn to Ruth 4. Ruth 4:18. Yeah, Joshua judges Ruth. So it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Joshua judges Ruth. The last little bit of Ruth. Ruth's a great book. I love the book of Ruth. We should. We should study that sometime.
It's short, so
Yeah, it is short. That's a quickie.
if I could just read.
Ruth 4, beginning at verse 18. You're too far in, I think, aren't you?
No, it's right after Job, right?
No, it's way before Job.
Oh,
Way before Job.
I don't know, just, it's okay.
Keep going back. Where are you?
Kings,
Keep going. Right there.
Samuel.
Keep going.
Just before Samuel.
Just before-
You're
there we go,
almost
got it.
there. Ruth 4:18.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, so now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nashon. Nashon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. Jesse fathered David. And David is the great ancestor of
Jesus.
Jesus.
He's
Yeah.
also my best friend. Jonathan.
Okay.
Jesus.
Jesus? Jesus, well, it's kind of all of our best friends. He doesn't like just you, John. I mean, just-
Jonathan.
That's your best right.
Jonathan was David's best friend.
yeah, right,
Yeah,
Oh, I
right.
right.
Right, he was, yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and so you see that Perez, who should have been the second in line, becomes in the birthright of Christ. This is, God doesn't care about tribal law. He's going to do what needs to be done, what his plan is, regardless of what little rules we decide to box him in with. It's always important to remember, when sometimes people, Christians, get all absorbed by rules and regulations, and as human beings, we like a lot of times rules and regulations because it makes our life easier, and we just like to be told what to do. And just find a rule and okay, now we know what to do. I love our current bishop because I just called him about something today, and I said I don't know where we stand on this, and he says, well, it sounds like a good idea to me, and he says just do it, and I said, well, I don't know, I don't know if it's allowed, and he said, yeah, I'll allow it. All right, then we'll do it. Because he just doesn't care about what his attitude is. We'll change the rules if it's a good idea. And Pastor Allen was telling me this morning that he had a congregation. I think it was his first call, maybe it was remember, but they had a good idea fund. And it was just anytime they would get extra money that they weren't expecting, they'd put it in the good idea fund. And then if somebody had a good idea, they had money for it. Isn't that a great idea? That's a great idea. This is the good idea fund. So yeah, that's the way, because we sometimes hamstring ourselves with all kinds of bylaws and constitutional regulations. And I'm not speaking against constitutional regulations. Those are good things to have. It keeps us keeps us going in the right direction. But we also have to remember that all of those rules were made up by us. And if we need to change them to accomplish some kind of ministry, then we change them. It's no big deal. We don't need to get all. It's like the foundation money. It's our money. We can use it for whatever we want to make it. Now we have to have the whole congregation agree to it because it's the whole congregation's money. We can't just have one person, the pastor or the youth director or something, say, well, I think I'm going to take some money out of the foundation today. Can't do that. You got to ask the whole congregation and have everybody agree. But we certainly can. We do anything we want with that money. It's there for our using. We intend for it to be used for expanding ministry. So we do try to, if we're going to use it for something, like we used it for the elevator. Well, when you have an aging congregation and half of them can't get downstairs anymore, might want to think about
When was that put in? When was that?
2,
My kids were in preschool, so I.
2000, somewhere in the early 2000s.
Wasn't Pastor Rick still there?
Yeah.
Was it that
He
early?
left in 97.
Yeah. Maybe it was 92. I was thinking 2002, but maybe it was 92.
92 is too soon, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we were still paying it off in 2004 when I came, because we borrowed money from ourselves.
It's part of the 75th, I think, which would have been 87 or 88 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it might have been like just shortly after that.
Yeah, maybe it's 92. I was thinking 2002, but it might have been 92. But anyway, that's an example of how you use the foundation money, as you say. this is great for expanding ministry. So that's like a good idea fund. So that's the thing about paras.
What was your idea though,
What was my idea?
to the bishop?
Oh, I can't talk about it. It's a district thing.
I say one thing, no, it sounds like that bishop's a good leader because,
Yes.
I mean, like so many leaders, I work for the government and they won't make a decision. They won't make a decision, so nothing ever gets done and nothing gets ever improved. So to have someone that you go to and he's like, do it. It sounds like a good idea and makes the decision just like that. I really like that. Sounds good to me.
Doesn't work, we'll blame you.
Yeah, that's right. I'll throw you under the
And
bus.
he's
No
willing to
problem.
take the risk and stuff for that,
Yeah.
for progress.
Yeah.
So it sounds, I like that.
Well, and he has a track record.
Yeah.
I mean, he's taken us in his 9 years of being a bishop. He's taken us from almost being insolvent to having close to $10 million in the fund, in the endowment fund. So, I mean, he's done a great job.
What is it?
Yeah.
How many bishops are there?
35
Okay, and how are they broken up? Like,
by district, so it's like a diocese.
okay,
Except we're weird because we're a non-geographical diocese. There's 2 non-geographical dioceses, or districts is what we call them, in the Lutheran Church. And that's SELC, which came in as Slovakians. And so the Slovak Church joined the Missouri Synod and as a district. And so there's about 63 congregations in the SELC. And then there's the English district, which joined the Missouri Synod as the English-speaking Lutherans, which we all are now. But back in 1911, the Missouri Synod was still primarily spoken in German. All of our services were in German. And so we're a non-geographical district. So we're the largest non-geographical district. We have 165 congregations in 22 states and Canada. And so we're a little bit different because we operate pretty much like a second church body, like our own church body. Sometimes people are very confused. I don't know if you've ever had those questions from people like, well, are you Missouri Synod? Yes, we're Missouri Synod. Well, I thought you were English district. Well, it's complicated. But most of the districts are geographical. So we have like Northern Illinois District, Central Illinois District, Southern Wisconsin, Northern Minnesota, Southern Minnesota.
and those are the ECLA ones?
No, those are geographical districts.
Okay.
But those
And
are
those are
probably
they're
pretty
all Lutheran
small.
Church Missouri
Oh,
Synod.
Oh, okay.
Broken up into, so you have the whole Lutheran Church Missouri Synod worldwide. Then you have it broken up into foreign and domestic.
Okay.
And then the domestic churches are divided into 35 districts. And each district has a bishop. And to make it a little more confusing for outsiders, because Danya always says that we need to publish the LCMS rule book so that people like Danya can come in and figure out what we're talking about when we throw all the initials around. Because those of us who grew up in it, we just know all the initials, But to make it more confusing, only a few of the districts call their leader bishop. Most of the districts call their leader president. So it's a district president as opposed to a bishop. Yeah.
Yeah, if you were talking size-wise, though, you'd be talking more on congregations, right?
What do you mean?
If English district, we're all over the place, but how many congregations?
About 165.
And then compared to other districts?
Depends on the district. We're what's called a mid-sized district.
Yeah.
And so there's small districts like New Jersey has like 40 congregations. New England has about 55 congregations, things like that. There's large districts like Michigan has 300 and something. Texas has 300 and something. Missouri has high 200s. And then we're a mid-sized 165. So we would be the largest district in the Missouri Synod, but we keep seeding our congregations to geographical districts. Like the entire southeastern district is all English. That all came from English. That was all our congregations. And that's where we came from. We came from Tennessee. That's where our roots are. And so all of our congregations were throughout the southeast. And at some point, I don't remember what the date was anymore, 40s sometime, they decided that they really wanted to be a geographical district. And so we seeded our churches to the southeastern district. Same thing with Montana. Montana is all English district that was created by seeding congregations. So, yeah. And the Lord just keeps on piling congregations on. We're just picking them up left and right, and we build and grow, and then usually seed them back to the geographical district after we do all the work. Yeah, which is fine. We tend to be a district that will take risks. We will go in places where other people won't go in. We'll try things that other people won't try. We tend not to. We cover the gamut with worship styles. We have probably. I'm thinking we probably have the highest churches. Some of the highest churches. Michigan has the highest, but they have one that's really, really super smells and bells. But we have a couple that are really big too in the smells and bells and incense and robes and all that. And then we also have the farthest, the other side, praise band and laser lights and stages and all that. So we cover the gamut in the English district because our mission and ministry has always been to proclaim the gospel. And however you can figure out how to proclaim the gospel to your community, we will support you in doing that. And everybody has different preferences. Some people prefer the stages, prefer the pipe organ and the stained glass windows. And we want to serve all those people. So that's what we try to do as best we can.
You didn't put English district before you came here?
No. No. I mean, I knew about it, but I had spent all my time in geographical districts before coming here. Yeah, I'd spent Indiana and Northwest. So, Northwest District, we used to like to say that if we divided the Northwest District into 4 equal parts, Texas would be the 5th largest district. Because Texas they love being the biggest district, but we used to always remind them that geographically they're not, because we have Alaska in the Northwest. And China too, by the way.
Can I ask you a question? Being that I played the bells and the Easter thing, and I really liked it and stuff, I'm just wondering if, so you said if they prefer the drums and the organ and I would say the bells and that type of stuff. So there's nothing in like Lutheran, I don't know,
doctrine that says you
that
can't,
like one
no.
over the other. Nothing, because like the tolls that we were doing with the bells and stuff, that seemed like really like Mary seemed to know exactly. We had to say it whenever we talk about the body of Christ. You can't play it on the word evil. It must be after.
That's why we call it smells and bells.
So it's not. There's nothing in Lutheran doctrine there's no rules about that.
No.
Oh, so
No, you can do whatever you prefer.
oh.
Yeah. In this congregation, we're built for that kind of worship.
Okay.
I mean, our architecture lends itself to that kind of worship. We've always done that kind of worship here. And so there's no point in changing when we have 3 Missouri Synod congregations that all do very contemporary worship within spitting distance of us. So why try to do something that they're doing, So we have Peace Lombard, St. John's Lombard, and Emmanuel Elmhurst all do pretty good contemporary worship, what we call contemporary worship. That's drums and tambourines and whatnot. So they do a pretty good job. And so when people have asked over the years of my tenure, well, can we do something like that? I've always said, yeah, we can, but architecturally we're not built for it.
It wouldn't go with this church. It just wouldn't.
It wouldn't. And the other thing is it's expensive. When I had my flagship service and my last parish was contemporary, and we spent $100,000 a year on the contemporary service. $100,000 a year hiring musicians, buying music.
Yeah, you got to get copyright. Okay, you used to use the music.
Yeah,
right.
right.
And then those big screens you got to install.
Right.
That would be really
Right.
expensive. And the
All of that
projector and
requires
someone to man
copyright
all that.
permission.
Yeah.
You don't use those screens without copyright. Well, if you do, you won't be there for long. It's all very expensive, and you can't. Really good contemporary worship in most churches is not done with volunteers. You fill in with volunteers, but you have to hire professional musicians to really do the job to get it. I mean, because there's just a huge difference between, Uncle Joe who plays guitar on the back porch and someone who does it for a living.
Well, the commitment too, because volunteers at a moment's
Right.
notice move or
Right.
die on you or something.
You can, if I go worship at a contemporary church, I can tell you in a heartbeat whether they're doing volunteers or not, because you can tell the difference. Yeah, and the good ones have professional musicians, and that's why we have the pipe organ, is because the pipe organ is an entire symphony instrument played by one person. You only have to hire one person, and they have an entire symphony at their fingertips. Which
You
is
don't need any kind of sound either.
Right.
For Cassie's wedding, we were maybe gonna have to bring sound in and everything, and that was what you do that. Luckily, the guy that sang was loud enough.
coming from Kentucky. We have the comment, and then of course you have Kentucky, which, unlike Illinois, who has 3 of their own districts, gets divided like the redheaded stepchild into 3 other districts. Because Kentucky doesn't have its own district. It's part in Indiana, part in Ohio, and part in Mid-South. And then she says that the difference between contemporary and good contemporary and bad contemporary is like middle school band versus Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And that's very true. Yeah, all of us love listening to middle school bands when we have friends and family in them. But that is the only reason we would ever listen to a middle school band is because you want to see little Johnny play the drums and or the clarinet or whatever, not because it's wonderful music. Okay, another thing I want to talk about is when we disobey God. Okay, because Judah disobeys God. Abraham is another example of disobeying God. Not waiting for Sarah to get pregnant, going on to Hagar. Nothing changes except our earthly blessings. They are either withheld or turned into curses with which we have to deal. But nothing changes. God's will is going to be done. We can't change God's will. Okay? There's no changing God's will. God decides how things are going to be done and what's going to be done, and we either get on board or we don't. But it's not like God says, oh, golly, I can't do that anymore because they're not listening. I mean, God does what God's going to do. I just like to point that out because, Judah and Tamar, you have this whole nonsense that goes on. And what happens? The child of incest ends up becoming one of the forefathers of Christ. Okay? So always remember that when you pick on Kentucky and West Virginia, that Christ had incest in his family too. Judah and Tamar. Yeah, he's with his sister. Well, it's not really.
Yeah, he's not really. It's
not
father-in-law.
not as bad as Kentucky.
Yeah.
When I had a church in Kentucky, I used to have one of the kids in the youth group who used to say, "I am my father's sister." She also was the one that, when we went on a trip one time, we were at McDonald's, and she screams at the top of her lungs, "Preacher, they ain't got no squirrel!" Do you have to make it so obvious that we're from Kentucky?
That's funny.
So what's the point? One of the things I like to think about here, because every time you look at the scriptures, like, have you ever been in church on a Sunday and you see the big gaps in the scriptures? Like, it'll be like chapter 1, verses 1 through 16, and then chapter 2, 12 through 18. The first thing I always want to know is, what's in the gap? Why was the gap left out? I'm just curious about it, And so, similar to that, you look at this excursus into Judah and Tamar in the middle of the Joseph story. What's the point? Why does God interject this Judah-Tamar story in the middle of the Joseph story? So he's just been sold to Potiphar in chapter 37. In chapter 39, we go into all the details of Potiphar's wife trying to get him to sleep with her, and him saying no, and he runs away, and she says he raped me, and blah blah blah. So what's the point? And I'm going to suggest some things, and you can suggest some other things. One thing is, I think, showing the difficulty and blessings of living a godly life. I think that's part of what God's showing us here. It's not easy, and it's never been easy to live a godly life, and we screw up. And even in the midst of screwing up, where Joseph goes and sleeps with his daughter-in-law, accidentally, albeit, nevertheless, God brings blessings out of it. So even when you have screwed up, you can still depend on God to bring blessings out of it somewhere. I think that's one of the things that he's showing us in this kind of a story. I think that he's showing us that God's will is always done, regardless of whether we work for it or against it. You can work against God's will, you can work for God's will. It's going to be done. So I think the more intelligent choice is, since you know it's going to be done anyway, is to work for it. You know, if you know God's will, and you do, because all you have to do is open the Bible to know God's will, work for it, and don't work against it, because it always ends up just being, it's going to get done anyway, and it ends up being harder on you. Look at all the people breaking the law, and yet God drew exactly what he wanted out of the whole situation. That's the key thing. Yeah. All the people going on Tamar, she leads Judah into having sex with her because she's afraid she's not going to be taken care of. And Judah's sleeping with a prostitute, and he knows full well that's not supposed to happen. And, and then he's going to have her burned until he finds out that, oh, she was the one. Oh, oops, he was all holy and righteous about her being burned because she's pregnant and she's supposed to be a widow. And then he finds out he was the one who impregnated her. And, all of that nonsense goes on. And God draws exactly what he wants to happen out of the situation.
Sounds like a lifetime movie.
Yeah. Well, Neil sent me this thing, this reel or meme, or no, it's a reel that he was watching, and the guy's reading the Bible, and the person he's talking to says, why do you read the Bible? It's so boring. And he pushes the Bible across, and they do this video thing of scenes from the Bible. Just amazing. It goes through a wall of water that the Israelites are coming through, a pillar of fire, 3 men in a fiery furnace. It's like, really? This is boring? Have you looked at this? This is good stuff. So it's yeah. Sarah says, well, shout out for Kentucky and its backward ways. All right, moving on to the next lost story. Judges chapter. We're going to start at chapter 2. It's going to take us a while to get through until we get to Ehud, but we need to know the background.
What's the name of the story?
Ehud, the left-handed man.
Oh, how do you spell that?
Ehud. Ehud, the left-handed man. One of my favorite stories to teach kids. Judges, Joshua, Judges, Ruth.
yeah.
So just back up from Ruth.
Got it.
2 chapters.
I'm here.
Yeah, Judges chapter 2.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing, though, about the
Sure.
Judah and Tamar story? What I get out of it is a great example of God's mercy. Because both of them, behaved so badly. And they totally went against Jewish law. And in the end, he still, that they did, in the end, start they continue their bad behavior.
Right.
And I think that's a great story about his mercy.
Yeah. Talk about the Judges and the Judah and Tamar story as an example of God's mercy. That no matter how stupid we are, he still brings good out of it for us. And there's, where did we just talk about that? The difference, man, who was I talking about that? Was that in Sunday's Bible study? Yeah, Sunday Bible study when we were talking about the difference between mercy and forgiveness.
Oh, yes.
Was that Dave? I can't remember. Who was bringing that up?
Sue Lauder.
Sue Lauder, right, Sue Lauder, yeah. Was talking about God's mercy and forgiveness and how those are two separate, they're related, is that God's mercy is so evident in forgiveness, and that through forgiveness we're empowered to be merciful as well. And that's where how do we find mercy for people in our lives who wrong us, or maybe who just irritate the devil out of us, It could be that's just that. How do we get, that student, who's the most annoying child in the world? How do we find mercy? And what I found, I don't know what you guys, teachers, have found, but what I have found in my years of working with kids is that very often it is the most annoying child that has the biggest impact on you.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
That will come back and thank you for the one that gives you hell the whole year.
Right.
Will come back and be like
Many times.
Yeah. I used to have a picture of Stephen Ramus. I don't know where it's in my picture box somewhere, but I had it for years on my filing cabinet, because anytime I'd get frustrated with a kid, I'd look at that picture of Stephen, who became a Lance Corporal in the Marines and was decorated, and he was an absolute hellion in youth group. Whatever he could do to disrupt things, he did. but it was that kid who grew so much in faith and in maturity. And I used to always think, if he can do this, anybody can do this. You look at these kids who, I don't want to disparage Goody Two Shoes, but I'll disparage Goody Two Shoes. But Goody Two Shoes, they get a lot of applause and a lot of limelight, and everybody thinks they're wonderful, and they are. They are wonderful, and it's all great. But they don't travel as far to get to where they are going as the kid who starts out on the bottom. And it's remarkable to watch God bless somebody who's on the bottom of the pack and bring them through to the top. And it's just amazing. I always tell the story, learning disability, and the school principal at the school he was at told us that he would never be able to fill out an application at 7-Eleven. That when he was when he was in 6th grade, he said he's never going to be able to fill out an application at 7-Eleven. And so I was unfortunately the guy retired and moved away because when Neil made petty officer in the Navy, I told him, I said, I want you to put on your dress blues and go over there and say you were right. I never could fill out that application for 7-Eleven. But he had retired and moved away by then, so we didn't get to have our fun.
That was mean.
Yeah,
Really mean.
that was not the best way to handle a child with learning disability, because Neil overcame it, and now he's in college and he's doing great.
But when you're a teacher and you have a kid who struggles, or people say your kids must get great grades and really behave, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
But when you have a child with ADHD and kids that have gotten in trouble and struggled, it just makes you a different kind of teacher. I don't know, I can't explain it. I'm always for the underdog.
Yeah.
And always making those phone calls when the kid does well.
Yeah.
Because they get enough phone calls.
Right.
Not
Right.
necessarily from me, but they get through the years.
Yeah.
So,
It's really, I don't think a lot of educators, a lot of pastors, a lot of Sunday school teachers, a lot of people like that don't understand how disheartening it is for a parent to get those constant calls. Know what your child did now? Yes, he's upstairs doing it right now. So yes, I'm fully familiar with what he's doing. Yes. And how?
Thanks for tattling on me.
Yeah, I appreciate your
I
tattling.
don't want to know. I want to just be.
And how wonderful it is to get those calls that say, "Boy, your kid did a really good job here." I mean, it's just so nice to hear that, and just to know that somebody, because every child has gifts, every child has abilities, every human being has gifts and abilities, and I think it is incumbent upon us as Christians on this earth to seek to recognize people's gifts and abilities. And it's sort of like when I do premarital care for couples, I always go into it first telling them, my job here is not to tell you what's wrong with you, or whether or not you should get married. That's not my job. My job is to try to help you identify strengths, because it is the strengths in the relationship that are going to get you through the hard times. Not knowing what's wrong. You already know what's wrong. I've never encountered anyone who says, yeah, we have this problem in our marriage, and it was a complete mystery to us. Everybody knows what the problems are. It's like ministering to somebody who's dying of lung cancer who smoked 4 packs a day, and you got to go in and yell at them about smoking. They know what caused their lung cancer. They need to hear, how do I get through this horrible time now that I have to deal with? Where do I find the strength to keep going when I'm dying? That's the evils of smoking. At that point, it's kind of obvious. So same thing with marital problems. Is it usually pretty obvious? It's where do I find the strength to do the next thing?
I often think too that couples should, you go to marriage counseling once things are going south.
Yeah.
I often think that before that happens, like that almost should be, I don't know if that would be a requisite to get married, but
Like a maintenance thing.
yeah, something like that. I think a lot of people, by the time you get there, they're like, you should have been here 10 years ago.
Yeah, I always tell the couples that I marry, I always tell them, my door is always open to come and tune up. And I have a lot of people. Over the years, I've had a lot of them come and see me and say, We just want to talk to you. We just wanted to check in. Nothing really wrong, but we just want to check in.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
More people can-
And there's even the system that I use. They have a section that you can do. It's an inventory that you take, and they have one for people who have been married for some period of time that you can take and just for a tune-up, which is kind of interesting. Okay, Judges 2, beginning in verses 1 through 5. And we're starting back a little ways because we need to get the history here. Now the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim, and he said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall break down their altars. But you have not obeyed my voice. What is this you have done? Sounds just like the Garden of Eden, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So now I say, I will not drive them out before you, and they shall become thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare to you. As soon as the angel of the Lord spoke these words to all the people of Israel, the people lifted up their voices and wept, and they called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed there to the Lord. Okay, but you have not obeyed my voice. So, the people of God suffered spiritual weakness, and spiritual weakness leads to negative consequences, some of which are observable, and some of which are not. We don't always see the negative consequences of spiritual weakness. Sometimes people are really good at hiding them. They never go to church, they never read the Bible, they're never close to God. Sarah says, is this Jesus speaking? This is the angel of the Lord, which sounds like it must be Jesus because he says, I did this. So it would be, we think it's not very clear because it's not an issue of whether they worship him, but it looks like, yes, I would say it was Jesus. What are the obvious consequences of sin, and what are the less obvious consequences of sin? Think about it. Not here. I'm not talking about here. I'm just about in general. Yeah, what are obvious consequences of
Death.
sin? Death is an obvious consequence of sin, right? Yeah. What's an example of a less obvious consequence of it?
Visible life on earth.
Unhappiness.
Sadness.
Conflict.
Yeah. It's
Bad relationships.
I used to feel really, really bad for people in the nursing home who were never visited by anybody.
Yeah.
And then I realized there's usually a reason.
Yeah.
It's usually the way they live their lives.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've seen there are examples of people who get very few visits who are wonderful people because they've lived so long that there's no one alive anymore that knows them. Okay, but very often people who never receive visits at the nursing home really were not very nice to other people, and that's it's a consequence of sin. Loneliness is a consequence of sin.
So would you say someone who's just not nice? Okay, like I have this aunt, and she's getting alienated by everyone, Aunt Debbie.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'll give you an example just real quick. My dad let her borrow this picture of my mom, who's her sister, and my dad called her. It's been 5 years, wants it back, and she says, "No, I'm not giving it back to you." And basically, beat it type thing. Mm-hmm. And then my dad, she's never welcome here again. It's just one more thing. Like my other aunt Jackie, she was yelling at her in the hospital. It just when my Uncle Bob was dying, and it's like, Debbie, what are you doing? Like, you're alienating yourself. You're being like, but is that sin? Like to be okay.
It reminds me of a woman who called me and told me that she was divorced and her children didn't talk to her, and her siblings don't talk to her, and she's very alone. And what can she do? And I said, where are you going to church? I don't go to church. I don't have any use for organized religion.
That's what my Aunt Debbie is saying now. She doesn't go to church anymore. She's done with organized religion. She literally just said that to me.
I wonder if she's the one who called me. The story sounds awful. The point is that if you're going to treat people like garbage and refuse to build relationships with people and be judgmental and nasty, that's the sin is going to cause you difficulty. I'm sorry, but we're not all perfect, and if you can't deal with people who are imperfect, maybe you should take a look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it might be that you're not quite as perfect as you think you are. You
A
know,
lot of those people don't though, like especially if they're narcissistic.
right,
And never narcissism, is that considered a sin?
right. Well,
Where does it say
narcissism.
like being nasty is a sin? Like where does like how do you know like what is
Well, you're
a
not-
sin?
you're not
I guess that's
emptying
what
love.
I'm saying.
You're
Like
not
just because
emptying
you're being
love.
So
Yeah,
look at the
that's
Ten
good.
Commandments. You always start with the Ten Commandments.
okay.
And you say, okay, there's a positive side and a negative side to all the commandments, right? And so thou shalt not kill. Obviously, God doesn't want us murdering each other.
Yeah.
But the positive side of that is that you should be of help and assistance to everybody. Okay, so you should help build people up. Like, thou shalt not steal. Obviously, you shouldn't take what's not yours. You should also help people build up things that they need and could use. Eighth commandment: don't gossip about people, but speak well of them. You know, and put I love to put the best construction on everything is the way I learned it. Now it's explain everything in the kindest way is the new translation. But and I always laughed because one of my confirmation kids' father was a contractor, and he says and helped them in their construction. Yeah, that's how you. But yeah, so I mean, there's always that positive side, and then Jesus, when it comes to Jesus in the New Testament, because apparently 10 Commandments were too hard for us, he reduced it to 2. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so the only question, like Mark said, the only question you have to ask is, am I loving?
Yeah. Okay.
Is this a loving way to behave? If I'm not loving, then I'm breaking one or more of the, well, at least one, probably multiple commandments. If I'm not loving people.
You kind of probably hit it on the end there as far as I can see. I mean, you talked about narcissists, you know, I mean, but it's like self-centeredness. Well, what does self-centeredness bring? It's like a general topic, but that could bring stealing, gossip,
Right.
covetousness. You know, you just think of all the things that being so self-centered, all the things that you would, all the sins you like couldn't stop sinning, you know.
Because it's just complete focus on yourself, and usually focusing on yourself brings a lot of problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah, if you
one-
contemplate your navel, you're never going to get out of that. It's just a hole that you're going to continue falling into.
I was looking through the little library book on that Prairie Path, the little library at the
Yeah.
Cube, and there was one self-help. I don't know who it was you were saying, but as someone, or maybe it's something else I'm reading. I don't know. I'm reading a lot, and the guy's like, you know, you are the solution to your life, and I'm like, no, you're the problem. Like, you're gonna go to God for the
Right.
solution. Like, and I thought, I'm like, I'm not. Then I put it back. I'm like, this.
Yeah. I have found that I'm always the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just-
You have people telling you that all the time.
I know. And I just accept it because it's true. I'm the problem. You have to be careful about narcissism. The only thing I caution about narcissism is truly a mental illness. And when you're talking about true narcissism, you're talking about a mental illness where it's like being a psychopath or a sociopath. You don't have the ability to think outside of yourself as a narcissist. And
Now, a
that's
lot of
a
people
mental
call-
imbalance.
President Trump, former psychopath narcissism.
Really?
I mean,
They
I know-
call all politicians names.
But I know, I have a friend who's very professional, 30, 40 years, psychotherapist. And everybody she knows says that Trump is a narcissist.
Dr. Bilodeau confirms that narcissism is a diagnosis in the DSM
Yes,
manual.
it is.
There you go.
It's really hard to deal
So-
with things.
You really have to be careful because, there's people will sometimes say things like, "Well, don't you think that President Trump's a narcissist?" I don't think I'm a
Yeah,
qualified
what does it matter what I
psychiatrist
think?
Well,
to
I know.
diagnose
I
him,
don't know.
you know.
When have I done therapy with President Trump?
Is he? Can he be? Be self-centered in the way he speaks? Yes. Does that apply to just about every politician I've ever known?
That can buy
Almost,
us out our
except
country
for-
his son.
Politician with
Except for Jimmy
I mean,
Carter.
come on.
Jimmy
I'd
Carter
rather
was the
have a
only
little
one that I ever
narcissism in
saw
voice than that.
that I couldn't accuse of that. That never spoke in terms of what was best for him all the time. You know, I never heard him say that. I never heard him speak that way. And I'm not a huge Jimmy Carter fan. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of his policies, but as a human being, the man is fantastic. He's a fantastic human being, and of course, it's the direct correlation is because of his faith.
Right.
He's a profound Christian, you know, and so yes, as a human being, he has grown immeasurably. And as he's gotten older, the older he gets, the greater his faith becomes because he hasn't stopped. He continues to study. He continues to teach. He continues, until it's ridiculous, the amount of work the man puts into his faith. So yeah, but generally, most people who go into politics learn that you're the only person who's going to beat your drum, and so they do a lot of their own beating of their own drum. That's just the way it is. I don't care what party you're talking about; they're all like that, and some of them mitigate it better than others. Generally, I have found the ones who have stronger faith do a better job of mitigating, of not being quite as bad as a self-centered as some others. And the ones who have no faith or who have, some kind of peripheral faith tend to be really, self-promoting and self-aggrandizing. So yeah,
It's all about their own self.
but would I say they're narcissists? No, I don't have that capability to diagnose them. I'm not a trained psychiatrist. This does not mean when God walks away from the people and says, "Guess what? You're gonna suffer because you decided to not listen to me. So they're going to be the people are going to be a thorn in your side." He was going to sweep them all away. He was going to go walk in and sweep them all away and take care of his people. His people said, these Canaanites are kind of fun, and the temples, they're kind of, you get to go down and worship and over at your place, the worship is slaughtering a lamb and getting blood thrown at you. And over here, the worship is eating a big banquet and having sex. So, I mean, come on, God, give us a break. And God says, okay, fine. Then they're going to be a thorn in your side. And I'm gonna pull back. That does not mean that he stopped loving his people. It's as any good parent knows. If you spare the rod, you spoil the child. There are times as a parent that you have to back away. Now, most parents, I would say, err on the side of trying to find a punishment. They try to find something that's going to bring pain to the child, and the goal is, you caused me pain, I'm going to cause you pain, rather than being like God and saying, sometimes all you got to do is back away, let them fall on their face, and then when they fall on their face, you can lean over and you can say, hey, that looks like that hurt, do you want some help? And if the person says, no, leave me alone, okay, I'll be over here when you need me. And that's really God's modus operandi most of the time, is just backing away and saying, so when people come to me and they say, I just feel like God is distant from me, I often say, yeah, he probably is. How are you living your life? You going to church? No. You reading the Bible? No. When's the last time you received the sacrament? Oh man, 10 years ago. Yeah, you're right. He's probably distant from you because he's sitting over here saying, hey, I'm right here when you want me, but I'm not going to drag you by the hair and make you follow me. He never does that. He never does that. And parents, especially lawnmower parents, you know what a lawnmower parent is? The ones that run ahead of their children, picking up all the sticks to make sure they don't get a boo-boo. Used to be called helicopter parents that hovered over you all the time. I like lawnmower parents better because that's much more accurate. So you got to pick up all the sticks, make sure little Johnny didn't get a boo-boo. Let little Johnny fall on his face. He's not going to die. He'll get hurt. It'll hurt. It'll be painful. He'll cry. Maybe he'll learn. Because I don't know about you, but the times in my life I've learned the most have been the times I've fallen on my face. That's when I've learned the most. I'm not saying I enjoyed it. I'm not saying, pick me, Lord, I want another. I'm just saying that that's the truth. Let's see. Instead of beating him to death, which I'd like to do, but God knows better, instead he sends them judges. Okay? To help them stay on track. And remember that a judge is not a legal entity in the context of ancient Israel, but more of a military leader. A judge is more like a military leader than a legal.
Sort of like Rome.
Julius Caesar.
Instead of they would appoint consuls, military leaders.
Sure. Yeah.
And
similar.
Eventually they became dictators.
Yeah, similar.
That's the.
Yeah, the people of Israel didn't want to listen to God. He set them up to be. It should be very easy. Here's your priests. Follow them. Do what they tell you to do. The whole Levitical priesthood is all set up by this time.
We want a king.
What's that?
No, we want a king.
Yeah, right. Well, no, first, now we're in Judges.
Oh,
During Judges, they don't like the judges, so they say we want a king. God said, no, you don't want a king. Oh, yes, we want. Everyone else has a king.
They like Deborah. Well, she was a judge.
Well, she's a judge, yeah.
Yeah.
But they wanted a king. Everyone else had a king. How come they can't have a king?
Okay.
God says you don't want a king. So, yes, we do. We want a king. All right, have a king, and then read Kings. They didn't want a king. It was interesting. Someone said to me, those of you who were in church on Sunday heard the reading from the book of Acts? That always makes capitalists squirm because they had everything in common and everybody sold their property and everybody just, this is communism. And in a sense it is. And what I said is, yes, communism is a fantastic plan, except for sinful people. If you didn't have sinful people, it'd be a fabulous, government.
But even with
I don't
capitalists,
think so. I don't think
sinful
so.
too.
Oh,
Because
if you
capitalism
did,
drives innovation. It's economists, John Keynes. Smith. It's all that the.
but why do you
drive
have
for
laziness?
because of the government pay
'Cause sin.
people so they don't have to do anything.
Right,
I
'cause
mean,
of
I
sin.
think that anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
take
know.
sin out of the equation. See, take sin out of the equation,
Can't take sin
and you don't have that problem. We can't take sin out of the equation, but if we could take sin out of the equation, then it would be a fantastic thing. We all share together. We all work as hard as we can because we love each other and we love the Lord, and we don't need any kind of financial motivation because we're motivated by our love for the Lord and our love for each other.
Seriously, that innovation and basically progress. Back in the day, like wheels. Just now technology. I don't know if that's progress right now, but what I'm saying, we'd still have that.
Yeah.
You believe
Oh,
we'd still
absolutely.
have that with
Well, yeah, I mean, even Germany in the 30s had fantastic progress.
Sure.
Hitler built the Autobahn.
Yeah.
They surpassed the world in a lot of things.
The problem is that sin, right. Well, that's like Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin used to say that democracy is the worst form of government in the world except for all the others.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, if we could take sin out of the, then the system that was in Acts would be perfect. We would all work for each other. We would all strive for the betterment of each other. We would push ahead for our love for each other and our love for the Lord. The problem is sin. Sin causes us to think of ourselves. Sin causes us to be lazy. Sin is what gets in our head that says, I deserve the thing that I hate, the phrase I hate the most. I deserve some me time. This is my me time. Okay.
Note to self: never say that to pastor.
Never say I'm taking me time.
I like the California clause. I have to have a sanctuary.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sanctuary.
Yeah. This is my sanctuary. Yeah. No. This is you're here for work. God put you on this earth for work. There's no retirement plan. When you get to retire, that just means you get to serve Lord full time now. You don't have to put food on the table anymore because you've saved up enough money or you've invested enough money or whatever, so that you don't have to work to put food on the table. Now you can serve the Lord full time. That's what retirement means. There's no retirement to sit around on your butt and do nothing. Okay, and even I remember I always talk about this. I've talked about this many times, but even if you can't do anything anymore, if you're physically unable to do anything anymore, you can still pray. You can still pick up the phone and call people and talk to them and inspire them. You can still, you can do a lot right up to the end. I mean, Lavera Levin was actively involved in sharing the gospel till the last couple of months of her life, where she literally couldn't get out of bed anymore and couldn't do anything anymore except lay there and die. But up until that point, that woman was actively working for the Lord for 101 years. Yeah, never retired. Yeah, so that was always her statement. Is that, there's no retirement. I've got work to do. When Joshua, verse 6, when Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went each to his inheritance to take possession of the land. Remember, they're all divided up according to their portion. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. And they buried him within the boundaries of his inheritance in Timnath Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of the mountain of Gash. And all the generations also gathered to their fathers, and there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. Okay? So, little reading from Luther for today. This is volume 8. Yeah, volume 8, American edition, volume 8. This is what Luther says about this. Is that right? Did I mark that right? Oh, yeah. Therefore, we shall answer the question whether Joshua did right in conferring this privilege of immunity even upon the ungrateful, godless priests, by saying that he did not do this for the sake of the idolaters, but that he did so for the sake of good priests whom he had converted. Yet, I would not find it hard to believe that at the time there were fewer abominations and monstrous acts of worship in Egypt than there were in later times. What these later terrible monstrosities in religion were can be gathered from the Greek and Latin poets. Yet such things were not received or approved of while Joseph was teaching. For as the experience of all time bears out, it usually happens that when a godly nation and one that acknowledges God has come to an end, another nation far worse and more godless takes its place. Thus it is stated in Judges 2:10, and all the generation who were gathered to their fathers, and there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work which he had done for Israel. But when the descendants degenerate, they devise acts of monstrosities. And when those who had served God faithfully are gone, they indeed retain the external works of the fathers, but add to them new acts of worship and mix falsehood with truth. And in this way, they slip into loathsome idolatry, as can be seen in the examples of the people of Israel who sacrificed to Ashtaroth and Moloch.
What page is that?
With page 131, 132 in American edition 8. With you, than the wish to worship God with more devotion and reverence than their fathers. And he goes on from there. The point Luther makes is it takes very, very little for faith to die and for a new generation to rise up who don't know God. Guess where we are right now?
We're there.
Yeah, we're there. Because so many people who were solid, God-fearing people somehow figured that their kids would just happen. It would just happen by osmosis. I love the statement I use all the time. Is a woman said because she had never forced her kids. I have no problem forcing kids to do things because I think that's what parents are supposed to do. I think you're supposed to force your kids to do the right thing. But she had never forced her kids to go to church. She had never forced her kids to go to confirmation. She had never forced her kids to do anything religious. And she said, and when one of her children said to her, "Why didn't you ever teach us any of this?" She said, "Well, there was always a Bible right there on the coffee table." Okay, I don't know about you, but I never once willingly picked up a book that was useful.
Yeah.
Until a teacher assigned it, or my mother said you have to read this, or whatever. I mean, yeah, I would have been happy reading Superman and Archie comics and watching cartoons. I never would have done anything useful had my parents not said. Yeah, I never would have eaten broccoli if I could have had cookies and chips instead. I would have never had milk if I could have had pop instead, or water. If I would never drunk water if they said, here's a pop, or you can have this glass of water. I mean, my parents made me do all kinds of things that I'm thankful for. Thankful that they made me do that. Deuteronomy 6:7 is the one where it says, is the verse that says, teach your children. Okay? And your children is not just your biological children. Okay? Your children is all the children of this congregation. That's why when people say, when kids are doing something wrong and some adult says to me, well, they're not my kids. Yes, they are. Go yell at them. Well, I don't think that's my place. Yeah, it is. Your job is to teach to the generations behind you. Okay? So wherever you are in life, the further you are in life, the more generations. That's my point. The bigger your responsibility. Okay, because your responsibility does not lessen as you get older. It intensifies because you have more to do, because you now have more generations. That's what Deuteronomy says. Teach the children. If you don't teach them, they will not know. Okay, and then we'll end up with what we call today the nuns, and not the N-U-N-S, the N-O-N-E-S. People who have no religion because nobody ever taught them, and nobody ever forced them into religion. The day that some child goes to hell because his parents decide they weren't going to force religion down his throat, and now he's a nun.
Are the nuns mostly people that haven't been taught? Are they apathetic? I mean, the ones that I know have been raised in the church and just can't be bothered anymore. Are those also nuns?
Right. Yeah. Raised in the church.
Well, just they were
Is it-
taken to Sunday school and gone to church, but they just aren't interested.
Right. Yeah. But what I was going to say is, raised in the church is not there's not a universal definition for that. There were a lot of people who were raised in the church in the sense that they went to church occasionally, and they went to Sunday school when they had to, and they might have gone to confirmation, and then as soon as they were confirmed, they never had to go back. From God. And all of that reflects what was going on in their house. Okay? How important was God in their house? If they came here for 1 hour and then the rest of the week never heard a thing about their faith, never had anything like I've said to you 100 times, no matter how good youth workers are, you can't beat parents. You can't. Parent, you've got the hardest thing that I had to learn was that I have to get parents on my side if I'm going to have any success.
Well, I have a relative that raised her kids in the church, was involved in the church, was on boards, did all these things, and her kids just, they don't care. They're not against it. They're not for it. They just don't
There's
care.
something going on there that you're not. When 2 + 2 = 5, you're missing something.
It just seems like she's not the only one. Anyway,
Right.
I don't want to.
Oh, I agree.
That.
I
It
agree.
just seems
There's
like
lots of people.
That's just like the 30 to 40-ish. That seems to be kind of what's. They're the ones that are.
Yeah.
That don't care.
Yeah.
A lot of distractions.
What I'm saying is, people who have children now, who actively influence children now,
Yeah.
need to be aware that this is what can happen. That should tell you how hard you have to work to keep them involved, to keep them connected. That baseball and basketball and soccer and hockey and all that crap is going to go away. Okay, but God doesn't. And if your children aren't taught that this is the most important thing they know, the most important thing in their lives, then they are going to be, like Dave said, distracted. There are going to be. We know there are going to be distractions. We know that already. So we have to work as hard as we can to make this the most important thing in their lives, so that when they look at their life and they say, when they get to the point where they can make their own choices, they say, this, for some reason, this was really important to my family. This was the most important thing in my family, and so there must be something about that. I don't think there are any such thing as nuns who were raised in that kind of family, where it was the most important thing. And I think that's my experience of nuns. Now, I could be wrong. You could prove me wrong.
And sometimes it's only one of the parents who
Right.
Yeah.
And the other one just has nothing to do with
And
God.
and I will tell you now that that mothers can do the best job they can do, but the fathers are the one who make the biggest impact religiously. That's just the way it is. I don't care who you are. Your mother can do the best job she can do, and maybe she can even succeed. Maybe she can overcome the father. But it's a hard road. Yeah, Dave.
And if you think about it, you know, if you, there can't be any break in the action.
Right.
I mean, from generation to generation.
Right.
As soon as you blow one generation,
Yes.
you could be done.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's how diligent you gotta be about it.
Yeah. That's how fragile faith is. You know, we like to think of faith as sort of that armor suit that we never have to worry about, but it's not like that. Faith can die very quickly. You know, it's sort of like my lily, my peace lily that I have. You know, I can water it and I can take care of it, make sure it's in the sunlight, and then I forget. And I come in one day, and I've only forgotten, you know, a few days.
Do you want me to come and visit?
Yep, would you please? Because that always reminds me to water my plants. When Judy starts talking,
Bored, and then he goes and waters.
yeah, I can water my plants.
I'll just come in and talk tomorrow.
I can look over also my peaceful lily, looks like it's on death's door, you know, and I know I watered it a few days ago, but it only takes a little bit for it to go through it. All right, let's close with the blessing. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. Amen.
And once you lose them, it's
No class next week.
Okay.
No class next week because I have to be out of town. But in 2 weeks we'll finish up Ehud. We'll get to Ehud.
Ehud,
We never
yeah.
got to Ehud tonight.
Hey, what is this one?